This conference will now be recorded.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to our first ever Wild Ones of Southeastern PA chapter meeting. I'm so excited to share my passion for native plants with you. I've been trying to get this thing off the ground since January, so I am so excited to finally be getting together. My name's Jessie Schiffler. I am the chapter leader for Wild Ones of the Southeastern PA chapter. I have a presentation to share with you. I've shared my screen, so I'm going to turn off my camera for now, and you'll see my face again at the end. We're here tonight to learn more about wild ones and about how to increase the ecological functionality of the landscapes we have the power to change. That means our yards, our gardens, our local common spaces, like local township parks or HOA open areas. By including plants like this swamp milkweed and this Joe Pyweed, and this spice bush and buttonbush and phlox in our yards, we can get to see all these great insects and help them survive this world. Wild Ones is a national non-profit organization devoted to increasing native plants in the landscape. It started in the 1990s in Wisconsin when 9 landscapers attended a natural landscaping workshop offered by the Audubon Center and became so excited about the idea of landscaping with native plants that they started Wild Ones to share information about the importance of native plants with everyone. I learned about Wild Ones on Facebook when various native plant groups would recommend consulting your local Wild Ones chapter or Native Plant Society for information, and I realized we didn't have a local chapter. Spreading the word about the benefits and importance of native plants seems like important work to me, so I decided to try to start up this chapter seedling. A seedling is what Wild Ones calls a new chapter when they're starting before they are actually chartered. And I think that's the cutest name. I asked for help in figuring out what was important to include in this presentation tonight, and Susan summed it up perfectly with these wise words. You can start anywhere from one native plant in a pot on your porch to converting half of your unused lawn area to meadow. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. Every single native plant added to the landscape makes a difference. And we can each do at least one plant. This area is in my yard. It's a patch that had been turf grass that wasn't used for anything except having to be mowed. Now it is a vibrant, lively space providing habitat for a lovely bald-faced hornet nest, shelter for little critters, berries and seeds for birds, and nectar and pollen for countless wasps, bees, beetles, butterflies, and moths. It is fun to watch in any season because there's always activity going on in this patch that used to be just nothing. A little bit about the people who are starting the Wild Ones of Southeastern PA chapter seedling. When I started reaching out to people about starting this chapter, these fine ladies were the first to lend a hand in planning. We met a few times before COVID shut everything down and had big plans as to what we wanted to do with the chapter and where we were going to meet in big groups, and it was very exciting. Besides trying to start up Wild Ones, I also volunteer with other great organizations. I am the Horticulture Committee Chair for the Chester County Beekeepers Association, and I really focus on advocating for native pollinators as opposed to just the non-native honeybee. I run 2 native plant sales, one in the spring and one in the fall, and I teach the beekeepers a lot about the importance of native plants and providing nectar and pollen sources for our native pollinators to offset the pressure they're feeling from their honeybees. I am also part of the Native Plant Committee for my township's Environmental Advisory Council, and we are working on projects converting turf to meadow. We're putting in a native plant garden, and we are trying to get the ordinance changed within the township so that all of the invasive and non-native species are taken off of the approved planting list, and it's only natives that will be on there. I also am a Force of Nature volunteer, and I've learned a lot about controlling invasives and restoring wild areas with very knowledgeable people there. It's a fun place to volunteer. And also with the Perkiomen and Watershed Conservancy, I've learned a lot about native plants, and they have a wonderful native plant sale in the spring. I highly recommend. Susan and I met while volunteering at the Perkiomen and Watershed Conservancy. We were doing some chop and drop spring cleanup, and I mentioned about wanting to start a new chapter, and she said she had heard about wild ones in New York and was excited to help brainstorm some ways to get a new chapter going. When I first put out an email about starting a chapter, Marilyn was one of the first to respond, and she made me aware that there had been a Southeastern PA chapter years ago that focused mostly on education and bulk plant sales. So she and Susan are both birders. I've gotten to learn a lot about birds while we were planning some of our Wild Ones goals, and that will be fun education to continue as we move forward. Audrey and I met at a sustainability fair hosted by a nearby township, and we instantly hit it off. She was enthusiastic about the fact that I even had a native plant information table at this event, and we both commiserated about how annoying it is that our neighbors are constantly mowing and blowing and just making constant noise and carbon output. But we are excited to help try and educate them through Wild Ones about the benefits of leaving all of those things. Some of the joys of planting natives and providing host plants. You see this monarch caterpillar here, getting ready to form the chrysalis, which is here. This beautiful goldenrod beetle that looks like some kind of fancy surfboard, and a snowberry clearwing moth caterpillar on coral honeysuckle. I was so excited when I saw this for the first time this year. All of these things come to my yard because I plant the natives that they need, and I am never tired of going out there and seeing what exciting things I might find next. Once we become a chartered chapter, by meeting these requirements, having 10 paid members, the election of officials, we have a few positions left. Please, if you're interested and want to dedicate some of your very precious time to getting this chapter going and being organized and a wonderful resource for all of our members, volunteer to be one of these officials. And then we have to make a 12-month calendar, which, don't worry, I have secrets to share later. We have a lot of that work already underway. But once we become a chartered chapter, we will receive a portion of the membership dues paid to National back to us to provide programming and event opportunities. We'll also qualify for tax-exempt status when making bulk purchases from native plant sales. If you're interested, please let me know if you'd like to fill any of these important roles, or if you want to help plan events or get guest speakers, just reach out. Our goal is to increase awareness in our communities of the benefits of native plants. Native plants support the food web by creating food and habitat for native insects, which in turn feed native birds, and on and on and on up the food web. Native plants with their deep roots also help slow and clean rainwater and mitigate stormwater runoff, improving the quality of water in our larger streams and rivers. Here's an example of one of the ways I go about adding native plants to my yard. As you can see in picture 1, I had a small bed planted with umbrella magnolia, buttonbush, and hoary mountain mint parallel to an existing rain garden. I then put down cardboard in picture 2 in the area between the two beds, and then I planned where I was going to put my shrubs. In 3 I ordered flats of plugs from North Creek Nursery, a wholesale native plant nursery, and I cut through the cardboard to plant the plugs. And then in 4, I covered the area with mulched leaves collected from neighbors who were going to put their leaves in the trash. I bordered it temporarily with old fence and railing and rocks that I had, and in the spring I'll round out the edges to make mowing easier. It can be as simple as that, adding to beds you already have, just expanding areas. The idea is to convert turf grass to functional areas. I'm hoping that you have all heard of Doug Tallamy, but if you haven't, have no fear. We're going to talk about him often, and I highly recommend you look on YouTube to see some of his presentations. He's an entomology professor at the University of Delaware, and his book, Bringing Nature Home, changed my life. It explained all of the reasons behind why we need to plant native plants, essentially to save this world. Homegrown National Park is a grassroots call to action to restore biodiversity and ecosystem function by planting native plants and creating new ecological networks. It was started by Doug Tallamy and fellow native plant enthusiast Michelle Affadari, and their goal is to have 20 million acres of native plantings in the United States, and that represents just half of the green lawns of privately owned properties. That means we have 40 million acres of useless turf grass in this country. And if we can do that, if we can get 20 million acres of native plantings, we will have more area than all of our national parks put together, and that's why it's called Homegrown National Park. The fun thing is, when you determine that you are going to plant even part of your land in native plantings, you can go to this website and get your land area registered, and then you will show up on a map like this. It tells me that right now the map isn't active, but they're working on it. So the more people that put their land in there, the more area we will be able to fill on this map. And when it becomes activated, it should be quite the sight. I'm excited. Things we can all do. We can share information about native plants. Plant natives to replace your turf grass and your non-native plants. Shop native plant nurseries. We want to support them. They're doing the important work of getting native plants available. Go and shop there. We're so fortunate that within an hour drive, we have so many native plant nurseries. I am on several Facebook groups of different native plant enthusiasts, maybe not in this area, but around the country, and they have to drive hours and hours to get to a native plant nursery or only rely on mail order, and we are fortunate to have many available, accessible, affordable native plant nurseries to choose from. And then encourage native plantings in open spaces that you have access to influence. We as a chapter want to help you with all of these objectives. In every presentation that I give, you're going to see Joe Pyweed. This is Joe Pye, this beautiful pink plant. I love it more than any plant in the rest of the world, and I love lots of plants, but Joe is my favorite. Shrinking the lawn provides so much more for wildlife. Joe Pyweed is here, the pink I talked about. Allspice is right back here. Culver's root is this spiky plant that bumblebees just go crazy for. Then you've got Black-Eyed Susan back here, mountain mint. If you can plant one plant and want to get the most pollinators on it, mountain mint is the way to go. And then witch hazel here. This stick that you see is actually a young golden currant that sometimes is struggling in the spring. I have to figure out what that's about. But you can see I keep my grass long. I don't mow it. I think I was very excited. I mowed 7 times the entire year of 2020, 7 times. I was pretty excited. Sometimes I went 4 weeks without mowing and I was really glad. So I saw a lot of life in my garden, I call it. We aren't trying to recreate the wheel or compete with any existing organizations. We'd like to share knowledge and resources and attend local events held by like-minded groups working towards the same goals of increasing the ecological function of our landscapes. If you know about an event that we would enjoy, let us know and we'll share it with the group. I plan to do the same. I am obsessively looking at native plant information and sources for native plants. So I will let you know when I find good things. We want to increase the awareness in our communities. We want to have guest speakers with knowledge. We want to take advantage of bulk pricing. We want to go on field trips and outings and events when those things are happening again. And really, we want to have fun and learn with like-minded people who share the same goals. We want Wild Ones to be a resource sharing group. I'm hoping this chapter will serve as a great resource for native plant enthusiasts of all levels, whether you just realized there are native plants tonight, or you've been an ecologically savvy planter for decades. I'd like this to be the place we share information. Books, lectures, presentations, sales, events, let's all share what we know. And all of these books in this picture are fabulous. I've had endless fun reading all of them. This website is a good resource for checking whether a plant is native to an area or not. Even nurseries specializing in native plants will often sell plants that are just outside their truly native range. There's a discussion about the pros and cons of this, as climate change is affecting the areas that plants can thrive in, and plants do migrate on their own over long periods of time. So we'll talk more in the future about the benefits of helping plants establish just outside their growing zones because of our warming temperatures. But there may be evolutionary issues that we are trying to rush that we can't really help. So it's worth discussing. I usually reach this site by Googling the plant I'm researching. I find it easy to navigate. You can actually scroll down and see into the county level if a plant is native to your area or not. So it's chock full of information, easy to use. I really like it to double check that I'm getting a plant that really does belong in Pennsylvania. Some other great websites and Facebook groups that I look to for information, that I look to for good discussion, that I trust as a resource. Lots of these I'm on daily. I will share posts of things that I find fascinating. I highly recommend looking at any of these if you want to up your native plant game for sure. These are partners with similar missions. I highly recommend any of them. The Mount Cuba Center is a wonderful place to go to take classes and just to explore native plants. The Natural Lands Trust Stone Lee is a native plant garden, and it's a great place to go and wander around and see native plants being used in a more traditional design. It's very inspiring to see what you can do with native plants if design is your goal. If you've never heard of this program, please look into it. The Pollinator Friendly Garden Certification by the Penn State Master Gardeners. It is the best application for reading and understanding what you need to do in your yard to help pollinators. It is unlike other programs that you can get your yard certified through in the sense that you actually have to meet certain criteria and show proof that you have met these requirements in order to be able to get the certification and then purchase the sign. Other places will give you a couple of questions such as, do you have a milkweed on your property? And if you say yes and you're willing to pay $30, you can get their sign and display it. I have mixed feelings about the ease with which you can do that. I do like that you are able to display that you are doing something for nature. And the same token, it should be more than having one milkweed. But like I said before, every one native plant helps, and it is definitely a start. I just found out about this program, the Watershed Friendly Property Certification Program. It is a wonderful certification program, very similar to the Penn State Extension Master Gardener's Pollinator Garden certification, in that just reading through the application lets you know everything you should be doing to take care of water coming through your property. It's a great education, and it's worth doing the things they recommend through the application. It is winter, so a lot of us are thinking about the spring and what we're going to plant, and I do winter seed sowing, and in the last few years I've always ordered my winter seeds through online resources like Prairie Moon or Prairie Nursery. And they have wonderful selection, very informative websites. There's nothing wrong with them. They are sourced in the Midwest, so they're a little further away than I would like, but they do carry the seeds of plants that grow in this area. I happened to stumble across this website, however, Toadshade Wildflower Farm, and was super excited because they are located just over the border in New Jersey, probably about an hour and 15 minutes from my house, maybe closer to some of you. And they carry a lot of really great native plant seeds and plants that are local to this area and much closer. You'll probably get much closer ecotypes to this area because they're so much closer than the Midwest. And they are a local business, and I love to support local businesses, especially when we have the same goal of trying to save the world through native plants. So I plan to buy the majority of my seeds to winter seed sow from Toadshade Wildflower Farm. And just in case you're wondering, I don't get any kickbacks. I don't have any of these businesses. These are all just organizations that I have either personally used or highly recommend because of the research I've done involved with them, but I don't have any specific affiliations or anything with any of them. Just in case you're wondering, it's strictly opinion and knowledge-based researching, but it's not like I'm trying to make a buck. I don't want you to think that. To make sharing easier, I'd love to start a Facebook group, newsletter, and mailing list. Those things are not necessarily my strong suit, so I will need help if those things are going to get going. I would love it if we can get group discounts to gardens and events sometime in the future once COVID is under control, especially with the wholesale plants. We've made a small purchase through North Creek Nurseries this year and split flat, the Jams and I, Audrey, Marilyn, and Susan and I, and it was wonderful. It was such fun, and we had a really good time picking which plants and then getting them and planting them. It was a great time. Our next few meetings will feature some local presenters. I'm really excited about them, but I also wanted to tell you of some opportunities that aren't directly through Wild Ones. Mount Cuba Center is having a class today, actually. It happened today. I apologize about this slide, when I created the original presentation, this was a couple days away. But as you can see, the language of flowers, pollination, ecology for gardeners online. You may still have access to it, a recording of it that you can purchase through Mount Cuba Center. Check out their website, and they have many future events that you can see also. Ecological Landscape Alliance is a wonderful member-based organization also that provides tons of webinars and online classes and events and symposiums and seminars. I highly recommend checking them out if you're interested in education in landscape design, landscaping with natives. They're a really good resource also. Our next Wild Ones meeting will be on Wednesday, January 6th at 7 o'clock. It will be via Zoom, so I'll send you out a Zoom invitation, and I will be presenting native plants in the landscape. It's a presentation based on information and ideas, things that you can implement immediately or in the near future to start the process of adding native plants to your landscape. I promise I won't give all the presentations, it's just this next one that I'm going to be giving again. At the end of January, there's another event happening, an Ecological Landscape Virtual Symposium. This is another great learning opportunity. You can look on the website for details. Then in February, our Wild Ones meeting will be, our guest speaker will be Beth Meyers. She is a conservationist at the Perkiomen and Watershed Conservancy. She's been there since 2017. She graduated in 2017 from Ursinus College with a degree in environmental studies. Her presentation will cover general native plant information, such as what are native plants, how do they differ from invasive and non-native species, how do native plants benefit our local environment, native plant uses for the homeowner, and information about the Perkiomen and Watershed Conservancy's Native Plant Project. The spring native plant sale is the best in the area, and even with COVID, they pivoted so amazingly, transferring everything to online and contactless pickup, and they pulled off just a wonderful plant sale. Can't wait for spring for another one. Then in March, we are fortunate to have Samantha Nestery, a horticulturist at Natural Lands, Stone Lee, a natural garden, and she's going to talk to us about native plant and insect relationships. Sam actually taught me the difference between the native Carolina mantids and the non-native Chinese mantids. So I wanted to share with you. Oh, where'd we go? We skipped one. Here we go. On the left, this picture is a beautiful native Carolina mantis. She has a more tapered abdomen, and her wings are always shorter than her abdomen. And if you ask me, her face is a little goofy. Her eyes are like off to the sides really nicely. She does not look to me intimidating. She looks sweet and lovely. I may be a little biased, but the non-native Chinese mantis here on the right emerges sooner and grows larger than the native Carolina mantis, outcompeting them for resources and eating a disproportionate amount of native pollinators, including hummingbirds. I have met many people who didn't realize that there were native mantises, that they thought that the only kind we had were these Chinese mantises. So they also thought that this ootheca, this egg mass right here, was the only egg mass that mantises laid. As you can see in this picture, the Carolina mantis is much flatter, and it looks almost like a zipper going down the middle. You'll find it on sticks. I have found it on a hose faucet. They under a seat cushion. They put them all sorts of crazy places. But these are the ones we want to see, and these are the ones we want to encourage. So for the last several years, I've taken to finding these and destroying them, and it's not so easy. I found the best way is to submerge them in water in a plastic container with a lid so they stay submerged, or microwaving them, and they don't explode or anything, but it just makes the larvae inside non-viable. This last year, I finally took the plunge and started culling Chinese mantises if I saw them in my garden. I would find them on swamp milkweed, preying on monarch butterflies. I would find them everywhere, and they do such damage ecologically that I couldn't stand the idea that I had all of these native plants drawing in all of these native pollinators, and then I had this bug that doesn't mean to be in the wrong place. It's just in the wrong place doing so much damage. So I have taken to culling them. It makes me nauseous every time, but I have seen many more Carolina mantids since I started to get rid of the Chinese mantids, and that's what is going to put the balance back in place. There are some people that recommend leaving the Chinese mantids because they eat the spotted lanternfly, but I highly recommend getting rid of them because they are not eating enough spotted lanternfly to make a difference in the lanternfly population, and they are also eating lots of other native pollinators, so they're doing much more damage than good. After this kickoff meeting, most of our future meetings will only be open to members. Please consider joining the Southeastern PA chapter so you can be a part of the change we are trying to create in our natural world. A household yearly membership is as low as $40. And remember, once we are a chartered chapter, part of your yearly membership fees return back to this chapter for use in programming. When you become a member, on this website and on the membership, under the membership tab right here, you'll select the Southeastern PA seedling as your chapter to join. And then I wanted to send you off with some wonderful pictures of, oh, we skipped again. Wonderful pictures of some of my garden areas in the summer. I really miss them. This is Filipendula rubra, or Queen of the Prairie, along with Heliopsis helianthoides, or false sunflower back here. I think they make such a beautiful mix in one of the meadows that I've created. My bee balm, I've got 4 different kinds, and it is just so happy, and I see so many wonderful butterflies and bumblebees checking it out. And just some more Queen of the Prairie. Plant a native plant. Join me on this adventure. If you have any questions, this is the way to contact me. Feel free to reach out. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. I hope you can share in my love of native plants, and we can go on this great adventure of learning and saving the world together. Take care. Bye, everybody.